Welcome to another installment of Farm Drainage University. Today we're going to deal with the issue of connectors when it comes to farm drainage tile. Basically, I'm going to show you just some real straightforward connectors, and we're going to look at the 4-inch because it's a common size for most laterals and they're small enough to show you. This is your basic quick connector for just making connections between two pieces of tile. You have one tile coming from one end, you have another tile coming from the other end, and you snap them together. I'm actually not going to snap these right now because if I snap them together, I basically got to cut them apart. That's how well these connectors hold. That is your basic internal connector. This here is a tap tee. This is used if we're actually tapping into another larger line. This is an internal tap tee to basically push into the inside of our tile like that. This is an external tap tee. Now you can get a lot of different types of external connectors, or you can get internal connectors. I prefer the internal, and I'll show you why in a moment. Look at this right here. You'll hear it snap, but see, I can pull it right out. That's the difference between an internal and an external connector. The internals work, but they don't hold quite as good, or the externals work, but they don't hold quite as good as what the internal couplers do. And I'm actually going to click it in with this tap tee just to show you how solid this actually is. So it clicks in, and look, I'm pulling hard. I cannot get that thing to come out. I mean, it is solid. That's why I love the internal couplers. Another coupler that's handy at times, there are times where you have to change different tile sizes. So you might go from a 6-inch tile to a 4-inch. So you'll have a coupler that will actually allow you to change tile sizes. So I'm going to snap that into that 6-inch, and then I'm going to snap the other side in, and there we go. We've got our connection made. So we're able to change sizes if you get the right size connections. When we're making connections, occasionally we'll want to branch one length of tile off another length of tile. For example, we might have a 4-inch line that's coming and we want another small 4-inch line. Now understand, 4 inch is not a real big line, so you don't want to overflow things, but there are times when you just need a small little branch and you got enough fall on that big line that you're able to do that. So what you'll do is you'll cut open your 4-inch line, you put this T into the line, and you snap it together. Let me recommend, when you're out in the field, you'll lay this T right over the line, you'll figure out where it needs to be cut. Don't just mark right here and here. Mark in just a little bit more, so you have to kind of compress this tile a little bit. You'll notice there's corrugations here. And unless it's dual wall tile, it will compress as you push it together. So you want that compression so it's pushing hard against your coupler so that everything fits tight and stays tight. You don't want to have problems down the road. So you put that connection in, and then you let your other end come off of that. So that way you're able to branch out on your laterals. That works really good on 4-inch, and I mentioned these tap tees. It's really not possible to use a tap tee in a 4-inch. Let me just put this sideways. Imagine if I drilled a hole and tried to put that tap tee in, because that's how you put these in. You just use a regular hole saw and a drill, and you drill through that. I'm going to just demonstrate real quick. Look at that. I tore that apart, and there's hardly anything left of that tile. You can't do that on a 4-inch tile. It's just not strong enough. You're so small. You put that in. Look at that. It's already restricting the tile. This isn't very sturdy. This isn't made for going into 4-inch tile. I recommend using the tees. Don't ever use a tap tee in a 4-inch tile. But imagine instead of a 4-inch tile, you're going into an 8-inch tile. And you can see this 8-inch tile here, I already have the hole drilled into it. And look how nicely these tap tees just slide right in there. I'm going to lock this in. As I said, notice how nicely they fit snug, so you got to work a little bit at it. And occasionally you might have to even use a little bit of persuasion, whether it's the tip of a spade or a hammer. You don't want to crack anything or break anything, but these things do fit snug. You kind of turn them and twist them and they fall into place. Look how solid that is. It's a very effective way to make a connection. But I'm going to demonstrate something else to you. I'm going to cut right into this tile with another hole. Okay. And you can see that that tap tee is coming off the side. Sometimes people actually use a regular connector and just slide that in. I'm going to try to show you. You can see there that connector. I can wiggle it back and forth. And when you look down the tile, you can see how much that connector is restricting the tile. You don't see that with the tap tee. You look down the tile, yes, there is a little bit of a bump into there, but it's hardly sticking in at all. So it doesn't restrict the flow much at all. That's one of the reasons the tap tees are so much more effective than just using a regular coupler going in. The regular coupler will hold well if you snap it in like that, but it is not the best scenario because it could potentially restrict your water flow. Unless you're really steep where you happen to put that in and then it levels out later on, maybe you won't have quite as much trouble, but you're way better off with the regular tap tee than using the regular coupler. There's a lot of reasons why I like these tap tees. As you can see, I mean, they're pretty solid in there. I mean, I can't get it out, but I have to work at it. So I'm not saying that they can never pop out, but they are fairly solid. But there are times when you may want to use a regular tee as opposed to a tap tee. One of those times is going to be you're digging up your main tile and you end up damaging the tile with your backhoe. And so you've got to replace that. So you're down in the hole, and I showed you the 4-inch coupler. Well, they come in 8-inch sizes as well. You snap that into the end, you snap it through, but it's really difficult when you're down the hole with a chunk of 8-inch pipe. See how small this little chunk is? And yet you can already see the curve. And it's pretty stiff. I mean, it's been outside, it's cold outside. It's pretty stiff. It doesn't want to flatten out very easily. So you're down the hole, and if you're going to put another chunk of 8-inch in and try to splice another piece in, you're going to have to work at it to get it flat so that everything holds to grade true and all your connections are tight. And it's going to take a little extra work, and it's worth the work because you want it to be done right. But you take that option as opposed to just being able to not damage a tile if you're very careful, be able to drill a hole, not disturb the soil, not have that extra challenge. You're way better off with a tap tee in most situations. But going back to the connections, as I mentioned, it's going to be kind of hard down that hole working with this stuff because it's so stiff. Especially, so you try to splice this little piece in. So you got this into the existing tile on the one side, you snap that in, and you got another piece coming off the other side. That's going to be a huge challenge to try to get those lined up and try to bend them and line them up. And this stuff is really stiff and solid. That's why we grab these. These actually work a little better than the internal couplers when you're working with these larger size tile. As you can see, I could just lay that rib right around the outside of the tile ribs. And then I grab the other piece and I lay that right inside that next rib. Of course, it's very simple on the table compared to down the hole. But you get those lined up, you bring them together, push everything tight, and they come right together and it holds. Then what you do is you just run zip strips. There's 3 holes along there. You just line the zip strips up with those holes. You come right through. You hook them. Make sure this pulls back in where it was. You pull it tight. And as you can see, everything lines up. You put another one here and another one there, and this is completely sealed. When you're down the hole though, you're going to have to make sure to clean all the mud out of your grooves so that that mud isn't holding it back. You also hope that this tile hasn't been in for too long and has ended up ovaling just a little bit, because that can add an additional challenge, because you'll have to try to push it back from being oblong to being more circular so that these will fit tight. So those are some of the challenges when you're working with those bigger size tile, and that's why we love these tap tees. I don't love the external tap tees, but I do love the idea of the tap tees, especially the internal one like I showed you before. One of the things I will say, however, is if you're working with a larger size tile, for example, this right here is a big 15-inch dual wall. And the tap tees work in these as well. And I'm going to try to get this to snap down in there as I twist it and line it up. There. It's in. And it is fairly solid. I mean, I'm having trouble pulling that out. So it's not like you just put them in and have to worry about them just flopping right out. This one is solid. But if I really work at it, I can get it to let loose. Notice how I mentioned I don't like using these? There is an exception. If I'm using a 15-inch tile, notice that slides in there and it's pretty solid. And it doesn't stick in quite as big a percentage of the tile as what it does on an 8-inch. So if you're looking at a 15-inch line or larger, I'm not going to be too worried if you use this as opposed to a tap tee. Yes, these tap tees can be used in up to 15-inch tile, but if somebody does decide to use one of these, I wouldn't be overly concerned. But I would avoid these on the smaller tiles because they have so, well, you can see really clearly, it is restricting this somewhat. You know, it is holding it back. So again, it's a very small percentage of a 15-inch tile, but it is still somewhat of a restriction. There's a lot of different options for making connections. I just wanted to show you some of the most basic connections. When you get into making a connection on that big piece of tile like I showed you just a little bit ago, you got two pieces of dual wall, you use those bands like I showed you on the 8-inch, and yeah, it can be a challenge. There's a lot of work. You're trying to clean stuff out, you're trying to get things lined up, you're trying to keep everything clean so that the mud doesn't get in the grooves, and so it's a lot harder to make a connection when you're using the big tile as opposed to the little 4-inch. But if you have tap tees available, they are a definite option. They're not something I would shy away from. They actually can improve the quality of your install. Thank you.